Hey everybody, my name is Kit. This is Americans Learn. So just two things. First of all, happy December. Hope all of you have a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and I wish you nothing but peace and prosperity. This year has been a little rough on me. There's been some ups and downs. I'm kind of once again in a little bit of a negative space, so please send some good wishes and good vibes my way. And if you got a hotline to any deities upstairs, put in a thought and prayer for old Kit Kat. But nonetheless, also real quick, I am kind of keeping an eye on my cell phone. So if you see me looking down here, I got family members visiting Chicago, and I want to make sure they're safe. They're out there shopping, and I love my family members. Okay, and I just want to make sure they're safe, as a true Roman should. Hey, buddy, this is not a Roman video. Sorry. Anyways, this is a video from Roanoke Tales, and it's very apropos because it's in my backyard, Chicago, but not really Chicago, but Chicago's by Lake Michigan, the Stonehenge deep below Lake Michigan's surface. Now, I've never heard of this before, so this is all brand spanking new to me. So let's get ready to enjoy this video. In a 3, a 2, and an uno. Please be sure to support the original content creator, you hip cool cats. Drink water, and let's find out what's underneath Lake Michigan.
Fake, there are a few that always are.
Oh, hold on.
When it comes to facts that are true but sound fake, there are a few that always are sure to raise an eyebrow. The Aztec Empire and the founding of Oxford University in England overlapping is pretty much classic, as is pointing out that the Great Pyramids in Giza's construction happened at a time when woolly mammoths were still walking the earth. But
that's right.
What about the fact that we know more about the surface of the moon than we do about our own oceans? While it may seem a little counterintuitive, the reasons it takes people off guard is fairly obvious. How is it even remotely possible that we know more about our moon, that humanity as a whole has only visited like a few handful of times, than about the seabed that surrounds all of us at this moment? And that is a threat to our existence. And while it might be natural to expect discoveries of all sorts of bizarre and previously unknown creatures lurking around the unexplored waters, it seems less likely to find surviving artifacts from thousands of years ago. But that's exactly what we're looking into today. We're heading over to the Great Lakes in the US to visit what has become known as the Lake Michigan Stonehenge. Yes, it's basically Stonehenge.
How'd it get there?
In Lake Michigan. The Great Lakes in the US are a series of 5 bodies of water that each span an enormous distance and hold an incredible amount of water. In fact, actually, they were made from the depression, I believe, of giant glaciers that covered the earth during its like almost snowball period. Well, it wasn't really snowball, it was more just the ice age, but yeah. So that land is still depressed and it's actually rising back up, so eventually the lakes will empty. But Lake Huron and Lake Superior are both larger than Lake Michigan, but it still clocks in at over 58,000 square kilometers in size and nearly 5,000 cubic kilometers of volume. With the city of Chicago located to the south, it is the
Chicago! Woo!
The only Great Lake that doesn't span both the US and Canada. Along with the other lakes, it has been the site of a huge amount of shipping trade throughout history. The tankers and bulkers that ran the Great Lakes shipping industry have worked throughout all sorts of terrible weather, keeping the economy moving and goods traveling, come hell or high water. And many have paid for it with their lives. It's actually very dangerous to do that job. Arguably the most famous wreck on the lakes was the Edmund Fitzgerald, which sank on Lake Superior on November 10th, 1975 with a loss of all hands. The mystery of exactly what caused its sinking has caused much debate over the years, and the tragedy was an inspiration for the song by the same name by Gordon Lightfoot. Given the number of ships that have sunk in various places around all the lakes, there are a number of wrecks for enthusiasts to visit and explore, and Lake Michigan has plenty of its own contributions to make, like the Michigan Dogman, which, if this channel ever gets up to like 1 million subscribers by 2027, because the Dogman comes out every year ending with 7,
hit the like button and subscribe. Original link to this video description box below. Do it.
Then I'll go up there and hunt the Michigan Dogman, and we'll just see if I ever come back. But anyways, this would at least partially explain why there is an underwater survey being carried out there in like 2007. Given the sheer size of Lake Michigan, measuring more than 300 miles at its longest and nearly 120 miles at its widest, there is simply too much of it to ever adequately fully survey. Dr. Mark Hawley, a professor at Northwestern University, is a specialist in underwater architecture, and it was he who made this bizarre discovery while investigating an area known as the Grand Traverse Bay. Located on the west side of Lake Michigan, it was in more than 30 miles long and up to 10 miles wide, giving plenty of underwater to record and investigate. As with many other areas of the Great Lakes, it has been seen that a few shipwrecks have been down there over the years. Like, those are pretty easy to spot. In fact, actually, I went up to a place called Sarnia in Canada, and you could actually swim right above a wrecked ship that was like 30 feet below you, which is pretty interesting because the water's like crystal clear, so you could see everything, and you can actually see how high up you are. It's pretty kind of surreal, actually, if you think about it. But given its location, it arguably has more than most wrecks. And for that reason, it has become a hotspot for amateur and professional divers alike who wish to explore what is left of these sinkings. With at least 8 notable and specific ships known to have sunk and their locations are actually, known to everybody, there is plenty to explore, but Dr. Hawley's team stumbled across something entirely different. They were initially conducting a sonar survey where they essentially just mapped the floor of the lake by use of specialist equipment when they came across something that was pretty unexpected. The images that they were getting back seemed to show some rocks at the bottom of the lake. Not unusual in and of itself, but these looked as though they were arranged in a manner far too deliberate for pure chance or for nature just to, prank 'em John, set 'em up, right? So the more they investigated, the stranger it all appeared. The rocks were arranged in a pattern much similar to the stone circles that we were all familiar with on land, trailing off in a line nearly a mile long. It had all the hallmarks of human construction and intent in its design. And as they went to have a closer look below the surface, the mystery would only deepen. The rocks varied in size, none quite as big as the sheer monoliths of Stonehenge, but from as small as a ball upwards to the size of a small car. More bizarrely, there were etchings in some of the rocks, ones that had survived despite their location deep under the waters of the mighty lake and presumably having been there for an extended period of time. Some of these etchings were thought to depict a mastodon, which is an animal that's long been extinct. While that alone was not enough to accurately date them, it was enough to merit further research. The question now became, why was there this arrangement hidden underneath the waters of Lake Michigan? Who put them there, and when had they actually done this? But kind of even more past that, what was their actual purpose? The mystery of Lake Michigan's Stonehenge had begun, and given the unofficial name that it was, it seemed natural that the public would look into its more well-known namesake for answers. Stonehenge is located in Wiltshire, England, and is probably the most famous example of a stone circle in the world. Believed to be 4,000 or 5,000 years old, it is considered to be the gold standard of these types of structures, not only for their sheer size and scale of it, but for its cultural significance to this day. People still like to go look at rocks. In the mind of
As they should all the time, because come on, rocks are cool. They're cool, man.
most people, this is what they picture when they think of stone circles. These Titanic-sized stones driven into the earth and forming an approximation of a circle in the center, with the main stones about 3.9 meters high, about 12 feet really, and 2 meters wide, which is about 6 feet, weighing about 25 tons, so pretty heavy. Two sides of the main circle at Stonehenge are slightly closer than the other two, making it technically a squashed circle, a spherical ellipse if you want to call it that, similar to the way that the Earth is technically a spherical ellipse, but can be treated as a sphere for more useful purposes. The same can be true for Stonehenge. When it comes to the process of creating such an impressive monument as Stonehenge with the technology available at the time, it has been a matter of some dispute. While some have questioned whether it was possible or not, clearly it's possible because it's there, we actually have an example of the best proof of standard available to us. Someone went ahead and just did it again. A gentleman by the name of Wally Wallington, that's actually his name.
All right, Wally, show us how it's done, buddy.
Is an American who set out to prove that using only methods available at the time, such as levers and counterweights, it was entirely feasible for Stonehenge to have been constructed by people at that time.
Yes, look, I hate ancient alien theories like, oh, did ancient aliens build the pyramids? Did ancient aliens build Stonehenge? Did ancient aliens build the monoliths in Central America and in Mexico? Did ancient aliens put up the giant stone heads in Easter Island? Did ancient aliens steal my car? Did ancient aliens eat my lunch? Did ancient aliens forget to pay the rent? Did ancient aliens... Anyways, you see where I'm going with this. They actually did an ancient aliens, like, did the ancient aliens help out the Allies in World War II? And then another one, like, did ancient aliens help out the Axis powers in World War II? They're playing both sides, man. Are ancient aliens a bunch of douchebags? Yeah, they are. Did ancient aliens pay their taxes?
His demonstrations of these techniques are well documented and can still be viewed on YouTube to this day. YouTube, it's just a plethora of information. So he went ahead and did it, moving, erecting, and situating lumps of rock in equal weight or more than those of Stonehenge with his so-called primitive methods. And while Stonehenge may be the most famous example, it is far from being the only one. With more than 1,000 examples to choose from across Europe varying wildly in size, scale, and frame, there is one particular example that might bear looking at: Scotland. And in particular, the Highlands and Islands seem to house more than their fair share of these stone circles. Granted, most of them lack the frame of Stonehenge, but it doesn't mean that they aren't steeped in their own personal history. There are circles of note through the northeast of Scotland, and here we go with the name. Somebody is definitely going to correct me in the comments, because that always happens, and I just want you to know before you do it, you're a giant nerd. So, like Tom Navari, near the Cairngorms or Colliery Stone Circle in Aberdeenshire.
Aberdeenshire, how's that sound?
But to find the best example that Scotland offers, we have to look at the Western Isles. As the name suggests, the Western Isles is the name given to a collection of islands off northwest of Scotland. The largest of these is the Isle of Lewis, with a population of just 21,000 people, connected to the mainland via ferry routes and nothing else. The Western Isles have their own unique history based mainly off of their location, and due to where they are situated, they suffered more than the rest of the British Isles with Viking incursions, and the legacy of the lives on it are not only historical
Lousy Vikings.
DNA of this population and the names of the peoples and places, but in the structures that were left behind, because if you're made out of stone, or if it's made out of stone, it's probably going to be the only thing that's really left behind from that era. It just kind of comes with the turf. But when it comes to standing stones, you need to venture into the west side of Lewis, particularly the Stonehenge, to witness one of the best preserved hidden gems in the world of stone circles. That's right, the hidden gems of stone circles. You heard it here first. The fact that these structures existed in parts of the world where, at the time, it would have been reasonable to assume no single person would have ever visited both in a single lifetime brings the fundamental question of their purpose, and like what these stones are even here for, and it brings all this into question. What was it in the culture at the time that led to these onerous and time-consuming creations, and what purpose or purposes did they hold? Part of the answer might be found in the mausoleum interred within the main Stonehenge site. A tomb that is nearly 6.5 meters long, or about 21 feet, within the complex of stones. What more of a grand and lasting tomb could a ruler ask for than to be forever buried within a stunning geometric structure that took countless men many hours to construct? The best guess that most historians are able to agree on is that it served some sort of ritual purpose to the pagan beliefs that were relatively widespread at the time. That is, until the Lord came in. Unlike a religion where it further spreads, the more it seems to dilute and divide itself into sects of opposing opinions and factions. The pagan beliefs that were very much so based around the changing of the seasons and the regular rhythms of the earth beneath our feet and the sky above us seem to hold firm no matter how far through Europe they spread. A prehistoric lunar observatory is the guess that had been made by some experts for Stonehenge, as well as the position of the moon in relation to various large mountains in the area. But we will put that.
Yeah, okay, so I could see that. I mean, look, I mean, even though it might seem like a coinky dinks, I mean, sometimes people come up with the same idea. It's just interesting. There's a lot of stone circles all around the world.
I wanted to decide maybe for another time.
And no, it's not ancient aliens. And no, you know what? Listen. For many of you who may not know, I do watch content from the Fat Electrician, and I guess the sweeping thing is becoming a very popular thing. Did ancient aliens sweep today? No, they didn't.
We'll talk about it. The discussion of the folklore relating to the stones specifically really being giants that, were turned to granite for their sins. It's probably what happened. But one of the most plausible theories about Stonehenge is that it serves as a blown-up version of a lunar calendar. If you were to stand in the center of the main circle at sunrise or sunset every single day, you would be able to track the time of year by how far shadows fell and in what direction they actually did. Experts have also agreed that at special times of year, such as the summer solstice, that the rising or setting of the sun beams exactly down on specific avenues that would carry ceremonial value for the people at the time. So, does any of this really help when we look back towards, North America and try to fathom out the mysteries under the water at Lake Michigan? The reality is that if the estimated age of Lake Michigan Stonehenge is actually correct, that it would predate Stonehenge by around 4,000 years. Not only would it have been built by people separated by vast geological distances, they would have lived in entirely different timescales. Unless the purpose and meaning behind these stones' construction was something that somehow managed to hardwire itself into the minds and ideas of multiple different peoples all over the world, it seems bizarre that such close comparisons could be made. Unlike Stonehenge, however, research into the underwater stones was hampered a little since their exact location is not public knowledge. The discoverer, Professor Hawley, chose to keep the coordinates a secret, which is probably pretty smart. You know, because whenever anything cool is found, there's always some idiot who's like, oh, we should go destroy it because, like, I'm an edgy 16-year-old man and I just hate society.
Well, you're going to have some. I don't think a 16-year-old's going to have access to scuba gear or submarine. You know, so that, hey, thank goodness a Titan sub didn't go there.
Seriously, if that's you, you're an idiot. Anywho, that's just my boomer talk coming out. But he went on to inform the indigenous people in 2 tribes that lived nearby, mainly because of the possible historical significance to them, but beyond that, the location has been kept from the public at large. Since the land-based stone circles in Europe may not have like too much to offer in terms of explanation for their North American counterparts' construction, it is worth next looking a little closer to home. And luckily, there is another example located a lot closer to the one in Lake Michigan, and this one offers a far more practical use rather than a possible tomb or lunar clock. A similar crop of rocks has been discovered, one that is maybe estimated to have existed around the same time, and that was found in Lake Huron. Although they sat under nearly 3 times the depth of water and they have been better understood and more studied, the thoughts of the experts are that this particular set maybe served one more of, like, again, a practical purpose. The layout and formation of these rocks is thought to have been used to assist in hunting large prey, using the impassable rocks to shepherd the animals to bring them to a location where they were easier to kill and then eat. A primitive form of funneling their prey to a location where they could be trapped, overwhelmed, and taken down. And not to mention, if you have a really long spear or an atlatl, I believe it's called, you could always hide behind rocks and throw them, which...
Hey, you know, taking down woolly mammoths, it ain't an easy job, but somebody's got to do it.
You know, considering woolly mammoths had giant tusks that if you got hit by that thing, it was definitely breaking your spine, you might want to stay behind a rock. But even closer to Lake Michigan, in fact, located within, is another location with similar significance. Beaver Island is the largest landmass in the lake and has some stones all of its own that might help us to understand what is going on below the waterline. Here, unlike the watery variant, there is a more clear parallel to Stonehenge. For one thing, these rocks and boulders have at least partially been arranged in something like a circle. In addition to these engravings on them, some have holes bored through them. This leads people to theorize that these may have served somewhat of a practical or ritualistic purpose. While these large boulders haven't been dated at this point, some have suggested that the land underneath them was deliberately burnt with fire in order to clear the area, making it almost certain that they were placed deliberately. However, the best guess to suggest that this is more of a recent construction, it puts it maybe about 1,000 years old or so, but it's recent, right? So while the argument and debates can rage on as to the exact purpose of these various stone circles and rocks, both above and below the waterline, there is one aspect of Lake Michigan's stone locations that points to something that must be true. In the time scale when the rocks were constructed or placed, or however else you want to describe or view it, what is now one of the largest bodies of water in the country was definitely fully above water at this point. The best theories seem to indicate that if the dating of Lake Michigan's Stonehenge are even vaguely accurate, they must be from a time between the 2 ice ages where there was no lakes at all, where all the land is now filled with endless tons of water and shipwrecks was not only dry and above ground, but stable and livable enough for society to live, to thrive, to hunt, to eat, and even find a time to create these various carvings and etchings. And it gives a different slant to the usual.
Well, it does. That does make sense, you know. There was a time before the lakes. You know, there was land, and let's face it, I've heard this hypothesis and theory a lot of times, where like the large ice glaciers retreating back as the ice age ended, carved Lake Michigan, Lake Superior, Lake Huron, and all the other Great Lakes.
Usual opinions that people hold onto how the local people and societies function at the time, whether they are for a practical purpose or if they truly represent something of the lunar calendar. They seem to show that there was a lot more knowledge and understanding of the world around them than previously thought. Like, everybody always looks at people from like thousands of years ago and they're like, oh, we're so much more smart now. Not really.
No, not really. No, I've seen my fair share of dumb idiots. Thank you, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, and so many others. Were it not for these glorious social media platforms, we would not be able to see how dumb people truly can be.
hardware was the same, it's just our software is different now. So despite the ever-present and seemingly universal theory that many of these stone circles are nothing more than pet projects for an unforeseen or unknown alien overlords, some of the more realistic theories seem more likely. For instance, what I would say is even if it was dated between the Ice Age and this land had not been depressed as of yet, those lakes were absolutely going to be frozen during the glacial period. So if for some reason somebody wanted to build that on the lake because it was just frozen over anyways, as it slowly thawed, the stones may have just sunk slowly into the now almost freezing ice water until finally it all melted and then they just were left on the ground. Well, that's just what I think. But as with everything else in history, it's unlikely, though, that we will ever really come to a full agreement between all the interested parties, and even less likely that we would ever have any way of actually knowing with absolute certainty. But it seems that some of these stone circles served as ceremonial hubs and embodied the prevalent pagan beliefs of people that built them. Had these purposes been explicit in any way, it's hard to imagine that the Reformation would have done anything other than smash them to pieces. So there is always a chance that these were simply testaments to man's seemingly inexhaustible compulsion to make his mark on the world wherever he has been. And in the same primal appreciation for patterns that let us enjoy them to this day, maybe that explains why they weren't torn down during the advent of Christianity through Europe. Either that or even
Yeah, I'm actually rather surprised that Stonehenge still remains to this day, knowing how there was a lot of crazy fundamentalists out there of all denominations. Okay, so at least we still got Stonehenge.
the ones that were suspicious of their true purpose didn't really care enough to try and tear down multiple tons of granite to prove a point. But this is only really true for the stone circles in Europe, but it doesn't really explain Lake Michigan. So when it comes to the stones of Lake Michigan, it really does seem to be anyone's guess as to their true purpose and their nature. Little to nothing is known about the people that have constructed them. Even the nearby stones and their alleged practical purpose of assisting while hunting, while plausible, can only ever really remain a theory. The stone circle on Beaver Island, while interesting in its own right, seems to have been from a time closer to ours than when the Lake Michigan Stonehenge was constructed. The secrecy surrounding the exact location of the underwater Stonehenge may be one born out of a need to preserve history and a way to protect something still existing in our world from a bygone era. But it serves to do little more than just confound curious minds even more. And Mark Hawley is one of the first to admit that the relative secrecy around these stones has led to a lot of either incorrect or incomplete information about them out there, like people are just basically making things up. So he's not too fond of the comparisons to Stonehenge, pointing out that it's not really the same size because they're far smaller than like the massive slabs in England, but they kind of also lack the same layout, the hinge portion. But while it may be easy to connect the idea of standing stones with the underwater discovery, the man who's responsible for the find himself seemed to think that they are something all of their own, and many of the theories and ideas that the general public have applied to them aren't really relevant. People hear underwater Stonehenge or Lake Michigan Stonehenge and go immediately to the theories we've discussed previously. Thoughts of lunar calendars and ceremonies, aliens building them underwater.
No, aliens did not build it. Tired of that theory. Did ancient aliens do this? Did ancient aliens build Rome? No, they didn't.
Aliens having humans build them underwater. Humans drowning building them underwater. All those things. But ideas of grand, also final resting places. But he seems to think that this construction is something else, entirely something on its own. And who's to say what the right call really is? I think it's mine. I think I have the right call. But maybe if it were open and accessible to the public, then recreational divers and amateur archaeologists could work together to piece together more facts about the strange relic in the lake. Or maybe somebody could just glue their hands to Stonehenge or Lake Michigan Stonehenge. But it's more likely they would just be damaged beyond repair by souvenir hunters, and those willing to damage something that has survived millennia just to take a piece of it home with them are complete jackasses. Remember that. So there are plenty of theories to pick and choose from when it comes to nature and the purpose of these underwater stones. Were they rudimentary lunar calendars? Possibly. It would imply that 9,000 years ago there were people who were conscious enough of the movement of the planets, stars, and moons to construct something like this, and it would be difficult to marry up with some of the more conventional stone circles that seem to fit the bill a little neater, but it is still possible. Do they serve a practical purpose, like hunting aids nearby? Again, that is a possibility. Given the time that has passed and the changes not only in the world that we inhabit at large, but in the physical location, there is every chance that the landscape looked completely different, and there are some glaring obvious advantages.
And of course, the reason why things kind of look a little bit different is because now, number one, the thing is underwater, and As things get covered by water, life likes to take over. But that is an interesting concept. What did it look like in its heyday?
To having nearly a mile of stone lined up, but we just can't be sure? Or is it something far simpler, something basic, almost unavoidable human urge to just build something, even if there's no overall plan, even when there's like not a specific purpose in mind? Some primal part of your brain just wants to put something in place to tell whoever comes along after they're gone that they were there. The carvings and markings of beasts long extinct still mark the faces of some of the rocks. Whatever their purpose truly was, it might not really make a huge difference. For a lot of people, it could be enough that they did it, for reasons all their own or for reasons that no longer make any sense to us. A group of people worked together to heave these rocks into place. They carved out the shape of an animal that would die out really not long after them. And it's all still intact. The best part is 10,000 years later, you can't find it and I can't find it, but people can find it. For some archaeologists, and indeed many people, that alone is more than enough. But yeah, that's going to do it for me. I hope everyone enjoyed, and if you enjoyed,
Okay, well, wait a minute, hold on. We'll finish the video up.
subscribing is awesome to you as we approach 200,000 subscribers, and liking is also pretty baller as it gets the video out there. I'll drop my Twitter, Discord, Patreon, all that stuff in the description, as well as my merch link where I have merch. It's roanokemerch.com. But speaking of patrons, I'd like to thank mine real quick. At first, we have the Literal Wendigo tier, which is going to be Grayson West and Trash Panda in a trench coat. Thank you, guys. Next up at the Eyewitness to the Event tier, we have Beaver Malaga and Wet Skeleton. Then, at the first-hand accounts, we have Cody Cherry Drake and Yeeps. And at the second-hand accounts, we have Kanan Johnson, Fred Rush, Justice Davis, and Troy. And the rest of my patrons, I appreciate your guys' support as well. You guys are ballers, and I thank you. But that's going to do for me. I hope everyone enjoyed, and I'll see y'all in the next one.
That's pretty cool. All right. So, all right. I like this. I like this a lot. That was a lot of fun. Let's check out a little bit of comments, though. What are people saying in the comment section below? Land beneath the Great Lakes is depressed. We always seem to talk about what the land is doing, but never how it's doing. All right. Builds megalith. Refuses to elaborate, dies out, absolute super sweet power move. Floating somewhere in the middle of Lake Michigan is also my favorite hat. It has a rooster on it. Anybody finds it, I'd appreciate a heads up. It's been out there for 5 years now, so I might as well be down to snap band. There you go. Imagine being the Michigan Dogman, just chilling out in the woods, and you hear in the distance, starting with the feet, followed by the pumping of a shotgun. Let's see. Hold on. Here we go. God damn it, to quote my good friend Roanoke, do you want an old god? Because that's how you get an old god. And the primal human urge to stack rocks. Really, though, I was born and raised in Michigan, and I've learned there is plenty of weird, mysterious stuff around, and the forest lakes hide a lot. Always fun to see some love given to us and our stories. I expect you here in 2027. Great video, Roanoke. Hope you are well. And let's see how many subscribers. Hey, listen, we're like 3 years away from 2027. He's at 235,000 subscribers, which is a super sweet power move. But maybe some people should be up in the game. So make it happen. Make it happen right now, live and direct. But I've never heard of this. And as a Chicagoan, I think it's everybody's rightful duty who has a city, town, village, small city, anything of that nature that borders Lake Michigan. We need to keep our heads on a swivel. 2024 is ending, and already there's weird UFOs over there by New Jersey. We have all sorts of craziness in 2024, okay? And I think we need to be ready. Everybody, time to boot up and suit up. The Dogman's coming back, and he wants his Stonehenge.